everybody. Welcome to Freethinkers Fireside, where we put the human and humanist one cozy chat at a time. My name is Helen, also known as House Bells. Thank you very much for being here on a Monday. And it is my very special privilege to welcome back Chris Shelton to talk about something that he mentioned on the last time he was on that I wanted to deep dive deeper into. So let's say hi to Chris again. Hello, Chris. Thank you so much for being back on the show. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this again. So when you were on last time, you mentioned people that have neurodivergency might be more prone into falling into cults or cult-like thinking. And I wanted to have a conversation about that because as someone that has ADHD and know plenty of people that were in high religious control groups and things like that, or come from cults, they also and those ones that I know that are neurodivergent, they describe their experiences from that angle. So I was very curious of what got you interested in this topic, and I wanted to talk more about it. So let's dive in.
Yeah, let's do it. Well, I can say also from my own personal experience, that's what kind of got me interested in neurodivergency, because I was diagnosed with ADHD, I guess a couple of years ago now. And of course, like we were saying before the show, once you get a diagnosis, then suddenly you get very, very interested in what this is all about. And so I'm really speaking today from my personal experience and some diving around in some texts and literature and my knowledge of cults and cult recruitment in connecting these things together. So I think, for example, something that I brought papers.
Yeah, I know. I love that you brought receipts. I love that.
Yeah, I got notes. So for example, right? One thing that a lot of humans have is a desire for belonging and for structure, right? But but many neurodivergent people, ADHD, autism, OCD, etc., can experience chronic feelings of social rejection or loneliness or confusion about social rules because we're kind of a little bit apart sometimes. And because we're ADHD, for example, being a childhood thing, we can be the class weirdos and the people who gonna get easily shunned or, oh, don't talk to him, that kind of thing. And so that doesn't, neurodivergent people have the same level and degree of emotional needs that anybody else has. So we want community. We want to get along. We want to have friends. We want to, go through life with meaning and purpose. And yet there's this sort of separation that can happen, right? In day-to-day social life, we can be a little ostracized or feel, even if we're not being, we can feel like we are, right? You get that rejection sensitivity dysphoria going, right?
It's so much fun.
Oh, isn't it? Oh, it's a blast.
I only found out about that because they're doing more research on it, and I only found out about it 2-3 years ago, and then so much of my life made so much sense. Right? I was like, oh. Right?
It really clarifies a lot. Yeah. It really does.
Now I don't feel like I'm crazy. It's just all chemical imbalances in my brain and not being overly sensitive or, and it's definitely helped me not adjust the reason why I was, being a people pleaser, and that leads in where I would imagine if you're in a cult that to not have the dysphoria to fall into those pleasing patterns,
very much so. Oh, very much so. And believe me, I completely empathize with that because my whole mantra from about the age of 15 forward was, if I just make everybody around me happy with me, I'll be happy. Right.
Right. Yes. Yes, I had the same mantra as a teenager, and it carried up into my like 40s.
Yeah, me too. Right. In fact, that was part of my wake up call out of Scientology is when I realized that I'd finally accomplished that, and I wasn't happy at all.
Right. Exactly.
It was like, this ain't working. This doesn't work at all. But it can set up. We can struggle with social norms. We can struggle with trying to fit in or having clear rules for how to navigate relationships and cults. There's things about cults, right? And one of them is that everybody's on the same page.
Oh yeah,
real strong on the same page.
Everybody's on the exact same page.
Yeah, like and you're not allowed to deviate from that page.
Everybody's on page 5.
That's right. This is what we're doing. And so, if you're looking for structure, if you're looking to have definite rules of how to get along with people, if you're looking for predictability in your relationships and your environment. And this is something that certainly, I can feel safe in saying that, neurodivergent people do crave that. Then a cult could be a very inviting place to go. And the way that it presents in recruitment or in retention is, hey, this is home. This is a place you can come. We're going to welcome you. And of course, with the love bombing and the other things that happen, it really does feel like you have found your people.
Right.
So that's a pretty big one as to, just one of many we can go over here today, but just that alone can be, can bring a great deal of initial comfort to someone, who feels like a social renegade or outcast maybe. And a cult solves that problem for them.
Yeah. It's sort of interesting because, like, as I was saying before the show, like, I can definitely look back at my life and see, like, where I could have fallen into, like, a high control group. Like, I can, at certain points in my life, it wasn't anything, not that anybody, like, approached me or anything like that, but, like, but at certain points in my life when I felt very lonely and isolated and I didn't feel like people understood me, and having this sort of, like, outsider feeling most of my life, that and this constant need for belonging human beings have, that I could find myself falling into a group that would, promise me, all the love and care, that I could want, but with a cost. And I would do the cost so I could feel like I belong somewhere.
That's right. And it's easy at first because the rules are kind of chill and everybody's just so friendly. And, at first it's real easy and you just dive right in to the experience of it. And you're having the best time of your life, or just about, right? You're really having all these peak experiences, and there's nothing like I don't know, I'm just arbitrarily saying this, but like the first 90 days or whatever, right? Like there's just no better time of your life than the first period or first phase of being part of a cult. It's very emotionally satisfying. And if there's, an intellectual component, scriptures and techniques and methods and stuff, they're throwing this stuff at you, and you're just eating it up, and you just feel wonderful, and that's how you stay. how you get moved into phase 2, and suddenly they start tightening the grip a bit, and and the better the cult is at slowly doing that to you, the more insidious it is, and the harder it is to realize what you've actually stepped into. And some people are in these groups for a couple of years before they really start feeling the binds, strict, holding them down. So, and by then they're, maybe, thousands of dollars in, or, they've been going down there 5 days a week, or, it's part of their life now. And so it's so easy for people to look at that and go, well, why don't you just leave? And you're like, hey man, why don't you just leave your job? Like how easy is this? It's not
Right.
always
Or
easy.
leave your family, because these
Yeah,
people start to
exactly.
become family. It's like
That's right.
your everything is tied up there. It's like it's not that easy. It's not like, you're in a relationship with a friend that's not working out, and you're like, oh, you know what, this isn't working, and leaving. And like the point is to integrate themselves into every part of your life. So where do you end and where does the cult begin?
That's right.
You mentioned like the emotional resonance people get when they're first started. It sounds like when you first fall in love, and
Yes.
it's the same sort of chemicals, like the oxytocin and all those feel good chemicals, and you want to be with that person or people all the time, and you can't stop thinking about it, and all these sort of things. And then that's usually lasts 2 to 3 years. Then it starts to go away, and then the like once you start, like, and the cult's a little bit different, because like in a relationship, if you're in a healthy relationship, you're not getting brainwashed. But that's when you start to say, like, can I spend my life with this person? Or is this going to be something that is long lasting, versus like a cult, which they not only are you're getting those feel good chemicals from, but from my perspective, that they're using them against you.
Oh
So
yeah. Oh
yeah.
yeah. That's when we're talking about cults, we're definitely not talking about the Boy Scouts or your bowling
Yeah.
league. We're talking
No,
about,
no.
we're talking about groups that are actively manipulating you. So yeah, that's definitely part of it. I'm glad you brought up the and love thing, because that's actually how we talk about it in the cult space. One of the comparisons that's made often is that it is exactly chemically or feeling wise, or however you want to put it, it is like falling in love. It's a similar form of awe, AWE, right? Like it's that kind of a feeling, and it's powerful, powerful stuff.
It, so so bringing it back to the topic with
Yeah.
us, with people that are neurodivergent, um, how like from and this could be just like just from your own observations, and I know that you have a master's in psych. Um, what is like versus like neurotypical people versus like someone like you or I that have ADHD?
Mm.
What differences would we see in that, and the reaction or way that someone might be drawn into the cult versus someone like ourselves versus someone that is neurotypical?
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you one characteristic that jumps out, is hyper focus, and the way that we are, typically, because of the way ADHD works, it's a attention deficit, right? Your
Mhm.
attention is kind of like a little bit random, and the executive functions are not totally fully under your control. So it's not like, oh well, today I'm going to pay attention to this, and then tomorrow I'm going to do this. Sometimes your brain's like, yeah, nice idea, right?
What's that like?
Yeah, exactly, right. Hope that works out for you today.
Yeah.
So that's the life, right? But when novelty enters our life, when new things are coming in and we have interest in these things, then we can become very hyper focused on that thing, that new thing. And this is something that whereas your neurotypical might be interested, oh wow, yeah, tell me more about that, that's so interesting, and then they'll go home and turn on the TV and not think about it again until maybe tomorrow or the next day or something.
Right.
A neurodivergent person might get some literature or buy a book, Dianetics, and this is a 450 page book or something, right? And they'll go home and read it that night.
Oh yeah.
Just, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing I've ever read, and then they're, calling their friends, did you read this book? Oh my God. And that hyper focus can actually work against them, because here they are in a hyper focused way, absorbing the propaganda and indoctrination of the cult and its bullshit materials like Dianetics, the modern science of mental health, right? or whatever, you know, or they go down and pick up the Book of Mormon, you know. Here we go. I don't like the Bible, but this book, wow, this is interesting. And down the path of Joseph Smith's fantasies they go, right? And so that hyper focus is a way where we're a little bit more susceptible to that recruitment process, that initial interest phase. It's not 100%. It's not like hyper focus is, you know, this on off switch that we can just, you know, have. Sometimes it turns on, sometimes it doesn't, but novelty tends to be a trigger for it. Right. And so, so that can happen. And that can be a way that people sort of speed their way into a cult, whereas a neurotypical person might not.
It's interesting because like, when you mentioned like I've read I've bought a book and I know that I need to like go to bed at like 2:00 in the morning and I'm still reading like because you become hyper focused and you're like, and it's this feeling of newness that we crave. It's like novelty. Like if something's like, why do I do a podcast? Because I get to have discussions about things that I find interesting, and then it gets my brain going, and I'm like, oh, cool, new things. But if you had to make me sit down and do like a dissertation, I would want to kill myself. I don't want to. Like
I did want to kill myself during my dissertation.
I was like, I don't really want to write my thesis.
No, it can literally feel like you're uncomfortable in your own skin trying to sit down to do these things. It's the absolute worst. And if we get focused on the wrong things, and you know, it's in a similar way to how you will see people go down those internet rabbit holes of conspiracy theories, and they're just, you know, consuming video after video after video of flat Earth, right? And then and then 2 days later, they're convinced that NASA is trying to, you know, spy on them and ruin their life. So it's in that sense, you know, it can be a pretty big weakness for us. I was mentioning the social norms and the sort of social disagreement or problems that people can have, but there's also another level that works at is moral ambiguity. People with OCD or autism, apparently, you know, again, this is just per stuff I've read. This is not something I have subjective reality on.
Right.
But, you know, the one thing I do know for sure is that cults have a very rigid view of the world. That's part of what makes them a cult. You don't have a easy come, easy go, turn the other cheek kind of attitude in a cult. And they therefore end up almost across the boards. You will find very rigid systems of good and bad and right and wrong, what's acceptable and what's not, right? This morality. And for someone who craves order and structure and, you know, OCD, autism, you know, various places on the autistic spectrum, and to a degree, ADHD folks, right? That moral clarity or this sort of the absolute certainty that a cult will offer in its dogma and its morality can be very, very inviting, because the world is a very morally ambiguous place. So everybody's got their own ideas about things, and you're okay, I'm okay. And in this post-truth world we live in now, the very idea of truth itself as a concept is pretty much under attack. So it's a pretty loosey-goosey place out there, and standards and rules and guidelines are, you know, I don't know, roll your own. I don't know what's right, what's wrong, who cares? Well, some people really have a hard time navigating life when that's the attitude that keeps getting thrown at them, right? So a cult solves that problem for them, and boy, does it solve it. I mean, it solves it with authority, right? Scientology's got a whole book.
Here's a guidebook. You just gotta, like, I'm going to show you the path. Now just follow me and everything will be fine.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. Here are rules. if you follow these rules, you're going to be okay. You're going to be great. In fact, you're going to be immortal, right? I mean, this is, again, Mormonism, Christianity, which has cults in it. I'm not saying all of Christianity is a cult, but Scientology, certainly. Here you have, in Scientology, there's a whole book just about ethics. And it's got like this entire couple chapters of rules and crimes and high crimes and misdemeanors that the church has defined. It's not civil law. It's the church's law. And,
right.
And these are the things you must not do. And of course, this includes things in cults like thou shalt not publicly speak against the cult.
The cult, right.
thou shalt not have opinions of thine own. So this can be, again, though, at the beginning stages, this can be a very appealing thing, and it can retain people in a cult because they'll start thinking, well, look, this place is a little overbearing. It's authoritarian. I don't know that I like all of this. I want to drink the coffee. I'd like to have a drink on Sundays or something, right? Like they want to push back against some of those rules, but they don't want to go back out in the mushy world of everything is just kind of who knows. And so they'll stay in the cult,
Yeah. And I can appreciate that because like, until I had a solid foundation of like, understanding that I have to make my own meaning, I wanted answers. I wanted things to be simple, and I wanted something, but then over time I realized, well, don't be a dick. One, and two, like the only meaning we have is the ones the one that we put into it. And for someone that likes, and like ADHD people really do like structure, but we want the structure to be but we want it to be flexible. like
yes.
You get too rigid and we're just like, oh no. Like,
that's right.
Like, so, but I can understand for people that need, because like my son has autism and he craves structure. That's why he went to the army, because he was looking for like structure and a way to like navigate his life. But also he hates religion. He thinks that like he's very atheist, very much a skeptical thinker. Like he wants the structure, but he doesn't want like to lose himself in it.
Right.
And I think that's what happens in cults, is that like people, they want the structure, but along the way they lose parts of themselves and they don't realize it because the structure becomes them rather than them working within the structure.
That's a great way of putting it. That's exactly what happens. Yeah. And another way of saying it is your identity becomes the identity of the cult leader to some degree. You start becoming like an alter ego of your guru, and you definitely lose yourself in the process. Definitely. Building on that business we were talking about again of the sort of, a lot of neurodivergent people get bullied, or they get excluded, or even can often feel, I mean, you tell me how this has worked out for you, but often there's a feeling of just not being understood.
That happens a lot.
Right?
Yeah. It's a weird feeling. Like, I know you felt this too, where I think it's just the way our brains work. And you and I, like me and a neurotypical person could be looking at got into a fight with the exact same person. Okay. And we're seeing it two totally different ways. and you're trying to explain not only the context of the fight, but why you're feeling the way that you're feeling, and you're trying to communicate, they don't get it. They're like, why do you feel that way? Like, I didn't get that. And I'm like, let me tell you about my emotional dysphoria. and we'll have that conversation. It's just a totally different way and also the way that we process information, and the way that we're able to remember things that we didn't know we picked up. And then all of a sudden we start spouting it out, and we're like, oh, it's a very different way that our brains are structured, and also that feeling of we've been told so long that we're lazy. We're not lazy. Our executive function just doesn't work well, and
exactly.
because of that, we have that feeling that we know what it is, but there's still the stigma that happens that we're not understood. Like, I'm not a lazy person. I just don't want to scoop my cat box right now. Like, whatever it is,
That's right. That's right. Well, I'll tell you, I run into this all the time in working with people who come out of a cult system, because this is a term that gets used often in self-negative talk and in what other people will tell them. And from as far as I'm concerned, it is almost impossible to be part of a cult and be a lazy person. These two things do not go together, right? Because when you go into a cult, it is taka. Let's work, let's study, let's work, let's study, let's go out and tell people about it, let's make some money, let's do this. You're always doing stuff, and there's constant demands on you to be active in the group, not just come down to the Christian Science reading room and sit around reading. Work, man. We got stuff we got to get going, right? We got a mission and we got to accomplish it. So when people come out of these groups and start calling themselves lazy, I immediately know, okay, either somebody's in your ear or you're in your own ear and feeding yourself bullshit. Because if you were in a cult, you ain't lazy. Right. It's not obviously absolute as anything is not absolute, but it tends to work out more often than not. Right. And I bring all this up because in addition to feeling, again, excluded or a little bit of an outsider, you can also feel very alone. Yeah. Because you're not being understood. Right. Or people are misinterpreting or labeling you with things that aren't true. But you don't maybe know the words, or you're not educated in the condition, or you're buying into the labels, and it just doesn't feel right. And your emotional needs can't be met in a situation like that. You can have friends, but if they're always kind of aloof or distant from you and never really understand you, then how close are you really going to feel? And this is where the love bombing of a cult really becomes effective for neurodivergent people, because love bombing is a term that means that the cult is showering you with praise and affection and understanding and empathy, any of these things that they can sort of present to you, which other people in the world don't seem to do. So here's something like totally like, wow, you really care about me. This can like just wow, right? And it can really bust open a person to become much more vulnerable with these people who are love bombing them than they should be.
Right.
But I've never had anybody talk to me like this before. I was 15 years old when I first went in and walked into a Church of Scientology. I'd been raised with the principles and understood a lot of the stuff. But the first time I actually walked in and did their personality test and did the whole thing, and ended up getting a whole lot of love bombing. Right. Nobody had talked to me like that ever, and these were adults talking to me like this. I'm 15. I was like, I can't believe how accepting these people are, how understanding they are. I was in high school. Ain't nobody giving me this kind of attention in high school.
Oh no! Oh God, no!
Right? So it was like
when we were in high school in the '90s. Like nobody's giving any attention. There's no internet. You can't find your weird group online.
Exactly. So that can be a very heady experience. And a point I wanted to make on that is that it's not gullibility. There's another one of these bullshit labels that gets put on people, right? You're in an environment of emotional manipulation. They're doing that to you on purpose. You can't have that kind of emotional warfare being waged against you when you don't even know you're in a fight, and then be told it's all your fault for falling for it. Right. That's a tough one, and I wish people could understand that process better so they weren't so judgmental about it, you know, because it's just like lazy. You get this gullible label thrown on people a lot. And yet if you understand the whole context of what's happening, then you see that they are just regular people who want what regular people want, which is acceptance and empathy and care, you know?
Yeah. When you mentioned the love bombing, have you watched the Twin Flames documentary?
I have not. I've
You
seen some
should.
interviews with the Twin Flames people.
Oh my God. Well,
Yeah,
Coleman was here a couple weeks ago and he did a deep dive. Coleman Watson he did a whole video on Twin Flames.
Wild, isn't it?
Wes. I will tell you, that cult is nuts. But Junjay Leisha were helping some people leave the cult. And she said that even people in the cult, there was somebody that was like perpetrating what the cult wanted them to do. And they felt horrible after. He's like, because they manipulated your morality. You did things that went against your morality. You knew on some level it was wrong, but you did it because you were kind of brainwashed into doing it, you know, and because you didn't want to disappoint, you know, the leaders, and you thought that on some level you were doing a good thing, when in the back of your brain something's wrong. I was listening to Behind the Bastards, and they were talking about the Children of God, sick cult, terrible people, and the love bombing that was when they first started using that term to describe the leader of the Children of God. But where they would force parents to commit incest with their children, whether they wanted to or not, which is sick and messed up. But kids start realizing on some level, even though they didn't have words for it, that some adults didn't really want to do it because, duh. And that's how they started to learn, that the kids that were born into the cult started to learn, like, maybe this is wrong because it's going against your moral value. And if you're someone that's neurodivergent, especially if you have ADHD, if you get that emotional dysregulation where you're perceiving you're being rejected by, well, like, you know, you're trying to love bomb someone, but also at the same time you're getting information like, no, you want the reward system. I have to imagine you're going to have some kind of, like, you know, I don't want to use schizophrenic, but kind of like cognitive dissonance so much that something has to give, because I'm like, I can't love bomb on one end and feel bad about it, and also try to please the leader on the other end. And like some kind of emotional dissonance is going to happen.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah. Absolutely. Now, this actually kind of feeds into another point about this, because especially, I think, again, this is more when we're talking about people maybe who are on the spectrum, or, you know, certain, I don't know, call it cognitive profiles or something, right? Yeah. You can miss there are certain conditions where there are social misunderstandings or an inability to perceive certain social cues or certain mannerisms and interpret them for what they are, or see, you know, a person who's predatory but see them as the opposite, right? There can also be language or tone misunderstandings, or they'll just miss it entirely. There are people who, for example, I mean, just to like for the audience, like, sometimes we miss sarcasm. Any of us, right? In any situation, neurodivergent or not, somebody's being sarcastic and you don't recognize it, and you have like this inappropriate reaction to what they're saying because you don't detect the sarcasm. Well, imagine that kind of thing, only it has to do with when they're love bombing you, or when they're ordering you around, or when they're telling you stuff, and you're missing cues or expressions or whatever that maybe a neurotypical person would pick right up on. And so that can be, and especially when they start messing with the language.
Right.
Because loaded language, I think we've talked about that before. It's a huge part of manipulation and control of people, is to mess with the language and give special definitions and special labels and thought-stopping cliches and stuff like that. And neurodivergent people might not pick up on that stuff and therefore miss red flags that a neurotypical person would pick right up on.
I see.
Yeah.
I can imagine, like Rainier did this when he was in NXIVM. Like, he would use psychological terms, and then he would redefine them, know. And if I can imagine, like, because not everybody is well versed in psychological manipulation. Not like they're versed in psychology, like in pop psychology, like they'll just describe anyone that's selfish as narcissistic. I'm like, no, that's not what that is. Or someone that, is very neat as OCD. I'm like, no, that's not what that is either. So, just pop psychology versus, and I can see if you are not well versed in, I mean, I'm just using this as an example, like well versed in what OCD is, what narcissistic personality disorder is, how it really manifests, so, and like, we've gone to school for this, so we understand, how it's described. We know enough that we can say, no, that's not what you think that is, But if someone's starting on pop psychology terms and then starts redefining, someone that, like, let's say you're in a cult and one of your friends wants to, like, hey, I don't think this is a group that's good for you. And then start using, like, well, they're selfish and they're narcissistic because they want you to leave and it's only about them. You don't know, actually the cult leader is narcissistic and your friend just generally cares about you because they twisted the definition of what narcissism means.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. That's a perfect example. That's exactly right. And they, or boundary violations, here's, because they like to, they really want to, like, close the space with you.
Right.
A lot of hugging and touchy, feely. Let's connect, right? It's this sort of artificial empathy that is created in a cult. And it makes a lot of people, neurotypicals would much more quickly, again, this is all very, very broad, speaking very broadly here, right? But neurotypicals generally would push back and enforce their own boundaries faster than a neurodivergent person might.
Well, especially if, like, I can, I know from my myself, and like I have a history of sexual abuse, and I have ADHD, and if physical affection was a part of a cult, and I haven't learned to develop healthy boundaries, and you get it, and you're in that space where you haven't healed your trauma and you haven't worked on it, but you're taught. I'm just using, like, this is, again, if I can look back at my life, when could I join a cult? This would have been one of the times. You get someone that hasn't dealt with that, and then they don't know how to have healthy boundaries. And not only are you people's, like, invading your space, but they're also love bombing you. Like, you're going, and you don't know how to say no. You don't, like, but they're also making you feel really, really good. That's how it happens, like, I mean, like, that's why, like, the free love shit turned into cult stuff in the 70s, because everybody was banging.
Right.
About being free love, where, like, hey, you should be able to sleep with who you want outside of marriage, and that type of stuff. It turned into, like, well, yeah, you're gonna fuck, but you have to fuck people within the cult, and you have to fuck people that you may not want to have sex with. So
that's right. That's right. Or, I mean, Jesus, this can go all the way crazy to, the OTO, right?
Right. What we were talking about.
I mean, woo, right?
Woo, that's a fun one.
Because no, it's wild, because the OTO specifically has sex and magic rituals, and they rely on the sexual act, or shall we say, fluids and things connected with that. Trying to keep this relatively R-rated, not X-rated, for their rituals and for their practices. And I'm not, there's different grades of people who are involved with this stuff. But the sex part isn't even about pleasure. It's about achieving some spiritual state or some psychological altered state, you could say, where they are trying to tune in the same way that maybe somebody who's taking peyote or mescaline or LSD is trying to tune in with the cosmic forces. And so sex becomes a medium to touch the metaphysical. This is definitely Aleister Crowley territory, right? This is OTO, Thelema stuff, and it's still practiced today. And there's other groups in other countries and areas that do similar stuff. So that's a thing. and I think it's confusing for anybody because there's so much emotion and biology connected with sex and sex adjacent things that I think it's very, very easy in an environment like that to introduce cult-like thinking easier, right? Because you're creating emotional and physical confusion, and you're trying to achieve these higher states of awareness. And so people are like kind of looking and hunting and feeling and trying to contact their elemental spirit or whatever it is they're trying to contact. And so their feelings, the biology of it can kind of mix things up a little bit emotionally with their partners in these acts. And I just happen to think that that's something that would be pretty messed up for people. Oh, hey, Helen. I was just describing how the emotional and physical confusions connected with sex-based rituals.
I heard it all. That's why
okay, cool. AirPods. Yeah. So it can really mess things up. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? You were a little closer to that world than I've been.
Oh my God. Well, that's the thing. Like I was telling you before the show, is that when I was when I was a high priestess within the pagan world, we weren't interested in controlling people. Like it was like I told you, everybody was a student and everybody's a teacher. Like, let's say you want to learn about the tarot. Cool. I'm like, all right. I'm like, we'll guide you, but you're going to teach a class. And part of the learning is that like, we'll guide you and we'll tell you, we'll answer questions, we'll give you materials, we'll tell you things to study, we'll have meetings about it, but we want you to get proficient enough that you feel comfortable enough teaching a class on it. Because I'm a guide. Here's some tools. Have at it.
Right.
Versus if you're, if you're part of the OTO, no. You have to hoop jump. And sometimes the hoops are on fire.
Wow.
Yeah, it is a lot. One of my friends was involved in it, but it is a lot of gatekeeping. You have to achieve certain things to move up within the tier system. I don't know if there's a paid component to it or not. I wasn't that into it, but I do know some stuff. And also a lot of the rituals are very secret. So there's that seduction of knowing something that somebody else knows. And then it is a lot of sex. Which, fine. If you want to have sex in a have it for a ritualistic purpose, I don't care. Go have at it. It's fine. Just make sure everybody's agreed. Or like, this is what we're gonna do. Like, consenting adults, fine. You want to watch, fine. Everybody's on the same page. No problem with that. The thing is, though, is that there was also this attitude, like, even going to the public ritual, my friend had to like assure that we were like good people and we were not going to like reveal certain secrets and blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, we're just going to watch a ritual. Like, what? And this was the public ritual. This is the ritual. And I told you, this was like watching people have sex that weren't having sex. Like, it was one of those experiences. And you're just like, this is weird. But then this was one ritual where and these people some of them have been in it for years, and they defend Crowley. Like, if you do any sort of criticism against him, it's kind of like if someone's deep into Scientology, and you start, criticizing like L. Ron Hubbard, and they lose their crap, and you're just like, he's just a dude. It's just a dude. They don't want, no, that he is the Godhead. He was tapped into the goddess Isis, and and was connected in ancient Egypt, and was talking to spirits and had special knowledge of the universe, and blah, 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 and it's just like, no, he took old esoteric teachings and just repackaged them. Like, this stuff is going on forever. Like, nobody's reinvented the wheel.
But it's funny because the exact way it works is you take some people who've never seen a wheel, and then you're like, hey, look at this. And they're all like,
look at this wheel.
Oh my goodness, I didn't know. And of course, there's a million wheels all over the place, but they're not looking at that, right? And so they think Crowley or Hubbard or whoever is like this source of truth, and that's I can't even begin to stress the importance of that core concept of what a cult is, right? Is it's where this guru figure is the source of truth. So all that criticism is really, if they accept the criticism, then they have to bring the guy down off the dais, right? They have to bring him down off the mountain. And that means maybe all these things they've been doing and all these sacrifices and things they've been doing and money they've been paying and et cetera, was all just a big waste. And ain't nobody wanting to go there.
Right.
So it's easier to just go, no, you get the hell out of here, you disbeliever, you apostate, you loser, just get rid of you. Because that way they get to keep their source of truth, Right. And it's wild what people will take as truth. I mean, you go down some flat earth rabbit holes, you're like, God damn, I thought I'd seen everything.
Oh, there's so much that I'm just like, I didn't think that was a thing. But okay, yeah. like I was talking to one of my dear friends, and I have a group that comes over. These are people I've been friends with, and they play D&D. And they usually they don't bring their kid, but because he's 3. And I said,
okay. Yes, that's pretty young.
He's a lot. Yeah. He's a 3-year-old, and this is supposed to be like a break, but then her parents they're taking a lot of ivermectin and colloidal silver, and started talking about like Jesus, and spanking was a good form. And I was like, you know what? I go, I will deal with him in my house. It's fine. Because these ideas like colloidal silver, like, cures cancer, and they legitimately believe it. And it's just like, and you're just like, what? But it's one of those things, like, there are people that think that, having sex during ritual is going to bring them to some higher plane of existence in the middle of orgasm. And it's like, yeah, like, I've had that feeling too, but guess what? It doesn't last. Like, and then, exactly. and then you're like, well, I still gotta empty the dryer. like, You're not like, yes, you've had this wonderful, crazy experience in this, but you still got to like, okay, your dryer's off and you do have to go to work tomorrow. Like
That's
you're gonna
right.
have to fold your clothes.
That's right. That's exactly right. It's one of the just since this is kind of I feel it's kind of interesting and fun to talk about. People in general, again, this isn't necessarily neurodivergency versus neurotypicals, but but people in general have a very, very gross understanding of human transformation and what it takes, right? If you want to change yourself, change your life, change your habits, it's a discipline. It's not an event.
Right.
And people think a peak experience is going to be the thing that's going to introduce long-term change, and it's not, because our psychology doesn't work that way, right? You can have a peak experience and it can last for a period of time, but as you mentioned, right? Yeah, I got to go to work tomorrow. That's what made me think
I got to
of it,
put my laundry. I still got to pay my water bill.
That's right. You got to come back down to earth and start dealing with life again, right? And then suddenly you're no longer transformed. Well, it's because that's not what makes transformation happen. And almost all of EST and Landmark and all that crap is built on this fallacy, this idea that the peak experience is the thing that's going to create the change. And it doesn't. It doesn't work that way,
I had a psychologist describe it like change happens when the discomfort of staying the same, the comfort of staying the same is outweighed by the need to change and the discomfort that comes with that. And you're like, okay. And then you're looking at your life going, this isn't working anymore. I need to, like, my relationships are suffering. My work is suffering. Like, it starts to affect your outer senses of security. And then you're like, and then if you're being honest with yourself, then you do the work.
You do the work. That's right.
And the work is hard. I have ADHD. It's not fair, but it's my responsibility. It's just part of my brain. It's something that I have to work at every day because I live in a neurotypical world. But also, if I'm honest about it and have conversations with people, that's the work, and saying like, hey, I need these accommodations for me to be successful. Are you willing to adjust and meet somewhere in the middle? That's part of the work. And at culture, you're just being told, what to do. And there's no negotiation. There's no room for growth because you're going to have these moments of peak experiences and they're going to feel really good at the time, like an orgasm. But, give it a couple of days, it's like those people that go on these like, ayahuasca trips down in like, Peru or whatever. And they go through these changes metaphysically in their brains. And sometimes they stick, like, they go down there for addiction treatment. They take some ayahuasca. They're not addicted to cigarettes anymore. And I think that's great. Yeah. I think that it does happen because it rewires the brain. But there's other things like you have familial trauma. That's not going to be cured, by taking ayahuasca. Like might help you reframe your trauma, but but you still got to go to therapy and you still got to do the work and do the healing the long-term healing process of that. And cults say, hey, you know what? We're your family now. And you don't have to work with that.
Yep. That's right. I was going to say that the thing that I try to get across to people with transformation is it's a perfectly valid thing to want. Don't get me wrong, that going and having the peak experience, it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? You're skydiving or go to a concert or you have sex or you do whatever you're going to do, have your peak experience. But the work is discipline. It's disciplined work. You got to establish a schedule, or you got to decide to do it every day, or you got to decide to change the habit, and you got to push it in, right? And very rarely do people have the peak experience and then, oh, hey, wow, I never crave a cigarette ever again. Really? Right. Really? Right. I mean, okay, if you say so. I think that there's some discipline involved in this. And what I love to point out to people with that, just is because it's kind of fun with the words, is discipline, it comes from the word disciple.
I know.
So, you need to kind of become a disciple of the thing that you're trying to do the change in. You got to learn about it. You got to study. You got to like knuckle down and make those changes very, very proactively. Otherwise, you will be swimming in an awful lot of disappointment in your life,
Like, well, it's one of those things like right now, I know I need to lose weight. I know I have to do the discipline part. I just don't want to right now. Like, and just be realistic with yourself. It's not like, because I've done it before and I can do it again, but I'm realistic about it. Like, I'm like, right now I'm choosing not to. And but also I know that because I've done it in the past, I have the capability to have that discipline. But also like, it takes I think it takes a month to break a habit. If you're active,
something like that. 2-3 weeks, something like that.
Yeah, like for your brain to rewire.
Yeah.
Like, like if you're like someone that quit smoking, like it took about a couple, like I would say almost 2 months for me to like completely like knock it off. I didn't go and I didn't do like patches or anything. I was just like, I'm just gonna like slowly cut back, and then eventually I was able to quit. Do I have a cigarette every once in a while? Sure. I had one yesterday. I'm not going to sit there and pretend like, I don't, but because I've introduced that discipline, I'm just like, I don't really smoke anymore. I don't buy cigarettes. Right. I barely smoke. Occasionally when my friends come over, I'll have a cigarette or what I'm drinking at a bar, and that's it.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. And I try to tell people that I work with to not beat yourself up about it. Right. It's a day at a time. Sometimes it's an hour at a time. I get it. I mean, my own mother said, the two hardest things that she's ever had to do in her life, one, have me, because I was this big ass long birth, right? It was like 24 hours of getting me out of there. And two, quit smoking. Yeah. It was just really, really hard for her. And some people not so much, right? Addiction is a spectrum thing. And so, so I try to encourage people to not beat themselves up too much about this. Life is meant to be an adventure. So take it a day at a time and do the best you can,
Yeah, and when you fall off the horse, you get back up, and it might take a little bit to get back up, but like, as long as you're trying, like every little incremental thing that you do and you stick to it will change your brain. It just takes a while. Yeah. That's right. And I don't think people appreciate, and I think like, if you get like people that, fall into addiction and like, let's say they stop drinking or they stop doing their drug of choice. And then that pathway, though, hasn't really been fixed. That's why they'll turn to like a cult, because it's going to feed the same emotional reward system, Yeah. And if you are neurodivergent and you've had an addiction, it's like, okay, well, I gave up, the alcohol or whatever, but I still need, because I think for like, I because the way that I self-regulate, I do it through, now I do it through talk, like I talk a lot, but before it was like, I would, to stifle it, I would, do advice. And I think if you don't know that you're doing that, you don't understand your own psychology, especially if you are neurodivergent, you are going to seek it elsewhere. And especially if you're getting emotional acceptance and social acceptance, you're going to fall into some of these cults where you're like, we'll give you what you want. We'll help you feed your addiction that you were like, because a lot of people that have addiction problems are neurodivergent.
I imagine that is absolutely true. And, and I can totally track with that. In fact, just another thing on my list here to bring up, is anxiety and compulsions and intense need for control, right? These are things that, you see in OCD, you see these on the spectrum. To some degrees, you see this with various aspects of the emotional dysregulation of ADHD. And it can create, I put here on my notes, it can create a kind of a desperate need to avoid uncertainty or danger. And so when a group comes along and says, listen, in this world of no answers and relative truths and who knows what, we know, we got the answers. We have the truth with a capital T. You do this, you do this, you do this, your future is assured. And to somebody who has anxiety and is really kind of revved up a lot and is looking for answers and is not finding them in science, which seems, to them, wishy-washy and all over the place, and there's no definitive answers and there's no absolutes, which is kind of the nature of science, and we get that.
Well, especially psychology, because we don't know everything about the brain. So,
oh my God,
yeah,
right?
And it changes all the time. We're like, well, we're changing this definition now, and it was like, okay, this was in the DSM for 15 years. Oh no, we're going to change it. Okay,
exactly. They want definite answers. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, in this world, right, honest people are going to tell you, well, absolute, definite answers.
Gray, dude. So much gray.
Few and far between, man, right? And they're they're seeking binary, black, white, good, bad, right, wrong. That's what they want. Another aspect of this also, in addition to the anxieties and the compulsions, can be phobias. Mm-hmm. One of the ways that David Miscavige was convinced that Scientology works, he's the guy who runs the show now, right? He's a tyrant. Mm-hmm. But when he was a kid, growing up in a Scientology household, he had asthma, and he had pretty serious asthma. And he was a very physical guy. And so it was a real impact on his life. And so when Scientology come along and says, hey, we got a whole rundown here, and we're going to cure your asthma. Forget that inhaler. Forget that medicine. We got what you need. And you deliver a peak experience to somebody, like an auditing session in Scientology, and it's very much like inducing an awe experience, right? Awe kind of experience. And that can psychosomatically, you could say, sort of psychologically, relieve chronic conditions for a period of time.
Yeah.
And the person will believe they are cured long enough to join the cult, get in, go deep, maybe a month or two or whatever it is, whatever the situation is. Everybody's different. And then they're in a cult, right? And the asthma came back. I mean, Miscavige wasn't cured any more than I'm sure Tom Cruise wasn't cured of his dyslexia, but he won't admit it because that's the whole origin story for him getting into Scientology, right? So it can become this really...
He's getting the positive reinforcement over and over again. So,
that's right. That's right.
I'm not saying Tom Cruise is a bad person, but because I don't know him. I don't know him as a person, but I do think that if you are constantly being told how wonderful you are, you're going to excuse a lot of stuff, and he has influence and power, and I get it. Do I think it's healthy? No. Do I think he should reevaluate his life? Yes. But I also what is his motivation to leave?
Exactly. And that's what I've mentioned to people many times with Tom Cruise is he is a true believer. It's not him, John Travolta as well, right? These celebrity Scientologists are not there because they're being blackmailed.
Elizabeth Moss is in the cult, and she does a whole TV show about a cult, and I'm like, whoa, girl. Wow.
Yes. It's okay. It's almost Olympic style, Olympic level of cognitive dissonance, Yeah. It's mind numbing.
Girl, you're doing the Handmaid's Tale. What?
Yeah. It really is something.
It's kind of Tom Cruise has done Minority Report and other things about high control groups and things like that, but he's still 100% in. It's one of those things that like those are I think there's a level of separation where you can be like, oh, that's like Jehovah's Witnesses, like you can not see the forest from the trees, and it, like kind of idea. And I'm like, okay, dude, like you're still in a cult. You might like the cult and like just admit that you like being there. That's fine.
No, it really is opposite world on a moral plane for them. Mm-hmm. I mean, Elizabeth Moss is second generation too. I don't know if you know that or not. She didn't get recruited into Scientology. She was raised in it. Okay. And speaking from experience with that, I can tell you that when you're raised with the moral foundations that the Church of Scientology, or what Scientology represents, is the definition of ethical good behavior, and that Scientologists, and L. Ron Hubbard specifically wrote this, that Scientologists are the most ethical people on the planet.
Oh, glad
right?
To know that.
When you're telling yourself that as part of your internal narrative, then to you, you're morally offended that people don't want to become Scientologists. That's what pisses you off,
I think Leah Remini said something about this, like when she was talking about her deconstruction, that she was like, I don't understand why not everybody wants to be part of this when she was in the cult,
That's right. And I had the same thing.
Yeah.
It's an outrage to you. It's actually, because my take is that's the deepest level they can go, is the moral level, because that's below emotions as far as I can tell. It's right up against who we see ourselves as and how we think about the world.
Our ethics inform so much of who we are as people.
That's right. And informs what we choose to be outraged about.
Right.
What pisses us off, right? It's based on our morals. So if your moral foundations are completely backwards, where L. Ron Hubbard is the source of all truth and goodness, and everything that springs from his lips is pure gold, and everybody needs to hear this, then it's going to become, then your view of the world is going to be very, very skewed from how other people would see the world who don't see L. Ron Hubbard that way, And I think that's some of the most powerful manipulation you can do to a human being, is to reach all the way down to their identity and kind of rewrite their morality. And that's
what Lee just said. It's a moral wound.
Yeah,
it's going really against your humanity. It's going against the ethics that are ingrained a part of not just what you were taught, but who you are as a person. Like my morals definitely shape the way that I view the world. Like my biggest thing is bigotry and injustice. Like I'm not a fan. Not a fan.
Exactly.
Not a fan. And I will sit there, and if I went against that morally, but if I was indoctrinated into a cult, that it was the opposite. Like, if I suddenly became white supremacist, it would go against that moral code that is ingrained into the self, then if I did against that, it would kind of fuck me up.
That's right. And that's why it takes a while for the deepest parts of what cults or extreme religious beliefs do to you.
Sorry.
It's not
I put this up. I love Hancheer.
What's that?
I put this up from Hancheer.
Oh my God.
That was so funny. Thank you. I love you.
That's hilarious.
Thank you. Anyway, go ahead.
Stop asking for my nudes. Anyway, I think that in the atheist secular world, we bump up against the same issue all the time, and maybe don't talk about it this way, but it is how we kind of know that on a social plane, religion is the number one source of morality for most people on Earth.
Yeah.
And so when that's controlling, and that's how it controls your entire worldview and makes people who are extremely religious do things that are morally reprehensible. War crimes. Stuff that you're just like, how could you possibly think that's okay? Well, because my religion says so, right? And so it's again, it's identity and the psychology of it. But I think it's I just don't think there's any level of a human being you can mess with that is gonna be more powerful than messing with their morality.
I think also too, I think most people are good, decent human beings. I don't care. I really don't care what you believe in, as long as I'm like, how you treat other people. You're treating other people with kindness. Cool. I have no problem with that. Be kind.
Yep.
You should do that. Be kind. That's it.
Yep.
But I think when we're talking about religion, and I'm kind of want to tie this back to the neurodiversity part of it, is that like my brother, if he watches this podcast, I'm calling you out. I'm sorry. I have 4 of them, but he'll know what I'm talking about. If he watches this, I'm going to call you out. He and I got into a discussion on Facebook, and he was defending a moral argument that I did not agree with. And it was something, and I said, and I sat there and I'm like, listen, you spend all this time arguing over this one point because it was part of your religion. First is when I know that your moral code would not tolerate this now. So when people start using, and I'm pretty sure he has autism, but because it's a very rigid sort of way of thinking, black and white. And also because of that black and white thinking, can shove it over here. And then, well, we're not going to use it in a modern context. We're going to go back 2,500 years and then talk about it back then. And I'm like, nope, doesn't work. But though they're willing to do that, and it makes sense in his brain because we have rigid rules for where we are in history, and doesn't want to look at the nuance of something. Right. He wants it straight, and that can be frustrating for someone like me. That's like, oh my God, there's so many grays here. And also, I know that you're a good person. I know your moral code because we're siblings, and I know the type of person you are, and you're arguing against your own moral code. And that to me is insane. I'm like, why are you doing that, man? Because I know that you're a good person. I know. Well,
and let's not forget that morality is informed by context. Yeah. So, in this situation, it's murder. In this situation, it's completely justified because the guy was breaking into my house, or we declared war, or, and now the same act is no longer murder, right? So the context also, I think, informs some of that. Yeah, that contradiction.
And I think there's a lot of us that can recognize that, nuance of morality. Our morals are if you steal to feed your family, I'm not gonna if you steal food to feed your family, I'm not really good. I'm like, I don't think you should be arrested for that. I think it's really dumb. Right. But if you take somebody's car and make it hard for them to feed their family, I'm going to get a little bit more upset about that. I'm like, no, man, you can't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You can't do that.
That's right.
And you understand the grayness of morality, but if it's always on less harm, I think that's the thing, what it's going to reduce harm. And we understand that it's on the spectrum.
That's right. That's right. And see, for us who, especially I think once we start getting educated on neurodivergency, I think that it proofs us up against the invitations to black and white thinking. And I think this is where we as neurodivergents maybe have an advantage over neurotypicals, because there's there's a pretty typical psychology with people that craves simple answers to complex problems. Right. We want a narrative. We want to know who the good guy and the bad guy is, so we know where to point the gun, and that's all we care about. And that's just tell me that, and I'm good. Right. And we can see more nuance in things and want to understand that nuance more. Now, I'm making, again, super broad generalities right now.
Yeah, this is,
But I think it's a point, because I don't want anybody thinking, the last thing I wanted to say today in terms of this, and I really want to make sure I get this in, is that none of what I'm saying today is an effort to make it seem like neurodivergent people are easier targets across the board, because they're not. Right? We have these things like we're less susceptible to groupthink because we question social norms and we don't easily mirror other people and just go with the flow. And we dislike rules that don't make any goddamn sense.
Right.
And neurotypicals will fall in line a lot faster. Ash conformity experiments and all that, it's 75% of people will go along with a complete lie just to go along with the social group. And neurodivergents tend to go, excuse me, I don't think that line is longer. I know, I don't think it is, and when we stand out sometimes, So it's not a matter of, we're just a bunch of, goobers who fall into cults all the time. And I want to make sure that I got that in there. We can also.
Like I pointed out to you, I can look points back in my life if the right person had approached me at the right time.
Yeah.
Maybe. But over time, the majority of the time, though, I probably wouldn't have fallen for it because I'd be like, that doesn't make any sense. I'm like,
that's right. That's right.
I'm like, I get my own planet. Why?
Right.
Why do I get my own planet?
That's right. That's right. What do you mean I have to live with my family for eternity? I don't like them.
I want that. Right. Exactly.
What?
Oh, no, I don't get my own planet. I'm going to be in a polygamous marriage to get my own planet. So
there you go.
Because the man gets the planet in Mormonism. I forgot about that. So,
that's right.
So
I mean, it was an immediate turnoff for me. I was like, wait a minute. I mean, I like my family. I really do.
Right.
But I don't want to be with them for eternity.
I moved to Florida to get away I love my family, but I moved 1,000 miles away.
Exactly.
Away from my family.
Exactly.
Eternity sounds like hell.
Yeah. So
but I just wanted to piggyback on one more thing you were saying, that people are nuanced. Like there are neurotypical people that will, they look at cults and they're like, this is just silly. Or there's plenty of neurotypical people that are in cults. Same as, because people are like, it's not just like, the way our brains are wired. It is our, how we respond to social norms, to trauma, how we seek out acceptance and love and belonging to other groups. This is just a human condition thing. But those of us that are neurospicy, our motivations of why and why not we might be in a cult maybe just look a little different.
That's right. That's exactly right. It's all context specific. I mean, let me underline, boldface, italicize that. Yeah. It's always that way. There's if there's any absolute in this world, it is that context is always king. It always matters. The situation you're in, the age you're at, the social situation you come from, the language you speak, all of it, the time of day, whether you're hungry or tired. I mean, there's a practically infinite number of variables as to what makes us do things. So we're always talking about simple things, bringing it down to this or this or this. But emotional needs are a pretty broad category. I like talking about that, but that's not all there is to cult recruitment, right? It's not just unmet needs. It can be social forces at play, peer pressure, familial pressure, the fact that the person needs a job and the cult has one. So they didn't
Rebellion.
get there because of the beliefs. They got there because they needed a job, you know?
Right.
It's always context specific. And so I don't want anyone taking anything I've said today and going, oh, see, if you have ADHD, you're an idiot, right? It's not, that ain't the message here today, right? So,
no, it's just different brains. Like we all have a different, everybody's got a different brain, and what's going to motivate one person to join a cult, you know, like a person with autism to join a cult versus someone that has autism and not join one. And, you know, approached by the same organization and given the same speech, depending on, you know, life experience and personal psychology.
Yep.
One person is going to join the cult and the other person's not.
That's right. That's right.
And because everything is nuanced. And I think that, and for like people that really like black and white thinking, I don't live there. I'm way too overly analytical. It can be a curse and a blessing because I am overly analytical. I'm like, well, there's a little bit that's going on, and I think it might be this, and like, because I just can't just accept something. I have to look at it from 20 different angles. Where someone that was like, well, they just said no. I'm like, yeah, but I want to know why they said no. Like, because that's just the way my brain works.
That's right.
And for other people, they don't get that, you know? And I'm like, I understand. Like, you can just say no and move on with your life. I want to know why. And I'm going to look at it from 20 different angles because then that satisfied that certain part of my weird brain personality. So
I couldn't agree more. I think that's exactly how it is. So but it's good. It's good to go over this stuff. I'm really, really super glad you were curious about this because this isn't something I've spoken about directly before, these points and how, you know, that we can be more susceptible in certain circumstances. And I think it's something we should be aware of, you know, because cults are dangerous. This is not stuff to mess around with. We want to know about these red flags. We want to know about how manipulation and control work. Especially in this modern world, we're surrounded by bullshit
all the time,
you know, all the time. And we've never been steeped in more pseudoscientific bullshit as far as I'm concerned. And now, of course, we have a situation where it's coming from our own government. I mean, you know, with RFK Jr. and all this other nonsense. So there's a lot to be on the lookout for out there. You know, it's not just a few con men and god men and gurus who are after your money. It's coming from all sides these days.
And I think also too, like, the reason why I wanted to talk about it too is because, like, you know, this is just something that people that are neurodivergent are like. This is just an education. Like, this is something you have to kind of think about if you are on anywhere in this swimming pool. That someone is going to want to take you under and drown you. And you have to be aware of what's going to make you sink or swim and what tools you need. And if you don't know those things, like, well, you know, like what your triggers are, why, you know, that, you know, why do I feel like my executive functioning is like messed up, but why do I feel motivated when like something that I care about will push me into doing something? And why does that happen? You know, and trying to understand that, because cults are going to manipulate any, it doesn't have to be, it can just be a person. If they know how to manipulate that, they're going, and it can be used against you. So it's just tools in the toolbox. That's all it is, you know. And those of us that are, you know, neurodivergent, we have to have a little bit of extra tools to understand like our own psychology and how we respond to certain influences.
Exactly. Couldn't have put it better myself. I'm 100% on with that.
Because when you said that last, I'm like, that's really fascinating to have a conversation about that. Because I couldn't stop thinking about it. I'm like, Chris is smart. I'll be back on the
show. Well, thank you for inviting me. I always like, yeah.
I like hanging out with you. You're fun.
Thank you. Well, vice
You're
versa.
super smart. You make me feel, I'm like, oh, he's so like, and you give me something to think about, which is really great. So I really appreciate that about you. Okay. Tell the people where it's in the Jubilee Do, but tell people where they can find you and anything you want to shill or promote you got coming up. Please do that.
Awesome. Okay, good. I will promote my channel. I have recently done a very deep dive into the mind of L. Ron Hubbard, and if you're interested in,
it's so good.
Thank you. Yeah,
I listened to the whole series. It was so good. I loved it, especially because my forward pagan ass was like, "Oh yeah, baby."
It's wild, isn't it? Oh my God, that Empress shit was just I was like, wow.
Oh my God.
Wow.
I was like, oh my God, dude.
Yeah, that was some crazy stuff. And probably tomorrow I will be doing another dive into L. Ron Hubbard and Lucifer. So that's coming up. Yeah, we're gonna do that.
I'm so excited.
Yeah. So we're gonna cover that one real deep, and I'm hoping to get that one done in one episode, but it might split up into two. We'll see. But that's coming. And of course, if you're interested in my work, you check out my channel. If I have a Speaking of Cults podcast, that's what it's called, Speaking of Cults. I do that every week on Saturday. I drop a new episode on culty stuff as a podcast, and you can get that on audio podcast platforms as well as on YouTube. And then I've got my book, which you can get on Amazon, which is all about Scientology specifically. So if you're curious about that, then you can check out my book, Scientology A to Xenu. So those are my plugs.
Awesome. I'm putting links in the chat. And then I'll put them also in the doobly doo so I can update that stuff. But like, oh my God, I'm so excited. Oh my God, I can't wait for L. Ron Hubbard and Lucifer. I'm so excited. Because I was driving in my commute listening to all the episodes, and I was like, oh my God. I'm like, well, it wasn't so much like the mythology stuff. It was like his mental gymnastics and his psychopathy that I was just like, this guy was fucked.
Wasn't he? From the very beginning.
Whoa.
The dude never had a chance to be anything but what he was. And what he was horrible. He was horrible.
And it was kind of it was just kind of amazing. And like, there's a certain like empathy I kind of have. It's a weird one. Like, it's kind of like how I have the same empathy for serial killers, like, because like there's certain aspects of like what made them who they are. Some of it is just their internal psychology, but outside shit. And I feel like for him, like, because he was a smart dude. He wasn't a dum-dum. He like, no. I don't think in any regards that he was a stupid person, because look at that. Look at why the conversation we're having right now. So, but I think ultimately though, is that underlying need of wanting control, but also that everlasting human need of connection. But he went about it all wrong. All wrong.
Completely wrong. It couldn't have gone about it more wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's right.
So dudes, I highly recommend you listen to this, because it's if you like aren't interested in Scientology but want to know how like a psychopathic person thinks, like you should just listen to this, because it's wild. So I highly recommend. So thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. Thursday, I have John the Skeptic on, and we're going to talk about the importance of community and in the secular spaces. This is something we constantly keep talking about, but it's important, especially since things are crazy nuts right now. Jonathan Roundabush, if you are a member of the CA, you know who John is. And then the following week, I have Captain Dadpool on Thursday. So I got stuff coming up. So if you want to be on the show, email me here. Do that. In the meantime, please like and subscribe. It's usually every Thursday. And then sometimes I do things like this where Chris comes on like a Monday and we talk about cults and shit. So it's great. All right. Thank you so much, Chris, for being here. This was wonderful. This was a really great conversation. I'll probably have you back on something again. Awesome. I'm going to wish, other than that, I'm going to wish everybody a wonderful week. Be kind, give someone a compliment, stay skeptical, and I will see you all here on Thursday. Bye.